back to CTN. I'm your host, Robert Van Sluten. Let's get started. Table views are used very extensively in iOS applications. And what they really are is a scrollable list of table view cells. Now what I have here is the application that we're going to build in this episode. And it simply has 100 table view cells, a very simple table, and there's text that represents the index to the cell. This ranges from 0 to 99. There's 100 of them. This will give you the first introduction to table views, and then we'll start looking at more of the complexity of the UITableViewController and UITableViewCells. Let's get started. Okay, there's a couple classes and protocols you need to be aware of. Obviously, there's a UITableView. There's a controller class, UITableViewController, which is designed to interface with the UITableView. There's the notion of a UITableViewCell, which is a class for the rows in a table view. And there's a very simple data class called NSIndexPath, and that just represents the row and the section. Tables can be broken into sections. This particular one isn't, but you can have multiple sections, and you see that quite a bit in applications. There's two protocols for the interface between the TableViewController and the table view. There's a UITableView delegate, and there's a UITableView data source. The data source really represents the geometry of the table view. How many rows are there? How many sections are there? The delegate is really for retrieving data information. You can take a look at these in the documentation, and I would highly encourage that. Let's go back to Xcode. I went ahead and just created a single view iPhone only application called Basic Table. I'm going to create a subclass of TableViewController. And I'm going to simply call this Table Control. And it's a subclass of TableViewController. I'm going to put it inside the group, doesn't really matter. Okay, what I have is I now have a subclass. I'm going to go over to the storyboard. Maximize this. Pull up the library some. And I'm going to bring in a TableViewController. Now it comes packaged with a table view. I'm going to bring the arrow over here. Back off on the storyboard. I'm going to delete this one. Move it over some. I'm going to go over and look at its identity. It's a TableViewController. I'm going to make it a CTN table controller. Let's go to the next slide and start playing with code. Okay, I jumped into our newly created table controller.m file. If you scroll around here, you'll notice there's two warnings that are embedded in this automatically generated .m. The first is it wants to know the number of sections. Now, as I mentioned, the table can be grouped. And we don't want groups, we just want one. So we're going to say 1 here. And we'll get rid of the warning, the pound warning. The other case, it wants to know how many cells are there in this? How many rows are there? Well, I want to make it 100. We'll change that. And we'll get rid of this warning. Now, what we have to do now is we actually have to put something in the cell. And I'll explain this piece of code above this comment here. The first thing I want to do is I want to paste in some pre-written code. And what this does is it creates a string. It goes to the index path and gets the property row. So in other words, it's getting a row number, which is going to range from 0 to 99. It's going to take that text and it's going to put it in the cell's text label.text. The cell has a label, its property is text label, and of course labels have a .text property. So it sets that equal to that generated string. That gives us our 0 to 99. Now the question is, what is this all about up here? Well, these tables are big, and the RAM in these devices is not huge. So you can't have all the cells in the table sitting in memory. The only ones you really need are the ones that are being displayed. So what this does is it automatically creates a pool of cells that it can draw from. If they go out of view, they go back into the pool. If they come in view, cells are taken out. Data is loaded by you. That's why it has configured the cell that's being displayed. And then it's displayed. So as you scroll up and down, cells are released into this pool. Released ones are pulled out. And you reload the information via the code you write. Let's actually go ahead and we're going to, well, I'll go to the next slide because I don't want the delay of the build and so on. But we're actually going to run this and we're going to encounter a problem. Let's go ahead and build and run. Seems like we have our act together. Whoop. It crashed. We go over to the debug section here, which automatically came up, and we scroll all the way up to the top of the stack, the debug trace. And we look at the cryptic stuff. Due to uncaught exception, something blew up. Oh, reason. Unable to dequeue a cell with identifier cell must register a nib or a class for the identifier or prototypes of what? Alright. In other words, it doesn't know what this cell should be, what its class is, or what its design is. Let's go to the next slide and we'll fix this problem. Okay, to fix this problem, I'm going to do two things. The first I had already completed, and I'll show you what that is. It was this line of code, static ns string cell identifier, and that just gave a variable for the key for the identity of the cell. You could have multiple identifiers. In other words, you could have a couple pools running at the same time. What we're going to do is we're going to run this, and we're going to encounter a problem. Okay, to fix this problem, I'm going to do two things. The first I had already completed, and I'll show you what that is. It was this line of code, static ns string cell identifier, and that just gave a variable for the key for the identity of the cell. You could have multiple identifiers. In other words, you could have a couple pools running at the same time. I took that line of code and I moved it up to file level. So I commented it out here. If you go up to the top of the file, static NSString cell identifier. So in other words, I've made this variable available to the entire file. It's global within the .m. Now keep in mind that the cells in this table are nothing special. They're just basic cells with a label in them. It's basically the default you get from UITableViewCell. In ViewDidLoad, I'm going to paste in one line of code here. Now what this does is it goes to self and it gets the table view. So in other words, I have the view. I'm going to tell the view register class. Now I'm registering the class of the cells. And I'm going to use UITableViewCell, that class. And it's for the cell reuse identifier, cell identifier. Well, we just saw that before in the static variable. So in other words, I'm telling the table view what these cells actually are. Let's go ahead and build and run. We have the application that I demoed for you in the beginning. That's it for this episode. The project will be available on the website, CocoaTouchNetcast.com. Thanks for watching.